Okay, I think we're ready to start. Go ahead.
Now, John is probably going to be doing a little bit more of the speech, but I want to share my feelings about Doom through interpretive dance. No.
It doesn't work. So it's been 17 years since Doom was released. It's kind of funny that we've never done a post-mortem anywhere on this game, which is kind of crazy. But now we are here to do it. And so what we're going to do is kind of go through the development of the game on a month-by-month basis. We're actually going to start about a year before we started on Doom to kind of foreshadow some things in the future. Okay, there's a little bit of volume. Okay, so we'll start in December of 1991. Actually, it wasn't December, was it? It was like
Anyway,
it's like
as far as you know, this is December
it's
1991.
August 1991, and we moved id Software to Madison, Wisconsin,
where I went to college.
And we visited in the midsummer, and the place was great, just like that picture there. It was
awesome, lush green, everyone having fun.
So then we moved the whole company, which was only 4 people at that time. And then when we got there, that's kind of what happened to us. And so we couldn't even go outside anymore. We had to kind of stay inside. So we were working on Commander Keen at that time, and during that last half of 1991, we basically saw that there was this computer called a Next computer that was created by Steve Jobs' company. And it looked really, really interesting. It was an amazing workstation, and we basically during December kind of finished Commander Keen, and we went on our 2-week vacation. But John Carmack didn't go on vacation. He's going to stay and program. Especially he wanted to program a Next computer, so he ordered a Next computer COD, but he didn't have a car, and it's snowing and freezing. So that's John going through the snow to the bank to get the money for COD. So when the guy shows up, he can pay him the $11,000, and then we finally got our Next computer, and that was in December of 1991. We started working on Wolfenstein 3D, and we really just kind of messed around with the Next. It wasn't until the summer, half a year later, we actually used the Next computer to do the hint manual for Wolfenstein and some Commander Keen brochures. So.
Yeah, it was worth a lot there for us.
But we were planning on using it later. It turned out to be a very important computer for our company. Right after Wolfenstein shipped, we were contacted by a company named Imagineer, and they wanted a Super Nintendo version of Wolfenstein. And so we were very excited about getting our game on a console, and so we hired a guy to start working on a contract because we got other games that we got to make. All right, so now it's November of 1992, and we had a year previous to this, November of 1991, actually shipped our I think it was our third FPS. It was our first texture map game called Catacomb 3D, and so it shipped a year before this time. But after this point, we decided that we're going to make another FPS.
And surprisingly, to some people,
surprisingly, Doom was actually the 5th id Software FPS. Those are the other games that we had done that were shooters.
Originally, Hover Tank 1 was just colored walls that you kind of drove your tank through, and at that time it was kind of a harsh, creative environment to make an environment come alive in. So I would put a green cube, and that's a tree, essentially in my mind, And Catacombs 3D actually had textures on the walls, and that gave it a lot more sense of space and a lot more fun, and you can cast your magic spells and blow things apart and stuff. And then the others you probably know.
Spear of Destiny is a sequel to Wolfenstein, by the way. So we basically start working on some of the tools for the next id FPS. We'll start working on Doom. Programmers in the audience might recognize the acronym WAD, which stands for Where's All the Data?
That's actually made after the fact. We were in like a cheap apartment called La Prada, and Carmack was downstairs working on stuff, and we had used lumps in the previous games and stuff. And I was working upstairs doing the Doom Bible, and he called up and said, "I need an extension. Like, what's a bunch of lumps?" And I said, "WAD." Or something. Said, "Yeah, that works. Okay."
Wad of lumps.
So a lot of people started using that, and then the LucasArts or the
and then Dark Forces later named their files gobs, so everyone was kind of coming up with another three-letter extension.
Yeah.
And so after we were in these apartments and kind of putting together the file formats for Doom, it then finally moves to the Black Cube in Mesquite, which was just down the street from the apartment complex. And
thank you, Google, for providing a picture of Down East Tower.
Yeah.
Which there's no other one on the internet.
Yeah. So we basically start thinking about like what is Doom going to be? What is this next game? It kind of it started with the name. We played a lot of D&D at id for years before we started making Doom, and so we decided that this was going to be one of our like D&D inspired games. Carmack was really excited to do a game that had demons in it. And, we all agreed. Yeah. We just did Nazis, so demons
what
are like,
else
whatever.
Is evil? Oh, well.
What else is evil?
That was kind of easy,
So then
social games.
Tom starts working on the Doom Bible right after we move in, and then he finished it at the very end of November of 1992. And it was basically a whole kind of a design document for a lot of the game, a lot of the sketches of like where all the levels are in the game and the names of stuff.
Progressions you go through, list all the tools, all that kind of stuff. I mean, you can look it on the internet.
This is kind of part of the beginning of the design doc here to kind of say like what Doom is. And there were a lot of we were coming up with all these ideas for the technology of the game and like what it's going to be and we felt like really sure before making the game what it probably was going to turn out to be like. Like we knew what the technology advances were going to be. We had an idea that we were going to be doing some dark subject matter. It was going to be like not bright halls with Nazis in them, but like dark, scary, hallways.
I call it
lots of halls.
Scary, dark, fast. Is basically the game.
We made a lot of halls because of Tom's last name.
Yeah,
but,
it's a theme.
So part of the design was, Tom wanted to do like what we'd done in Wolfenstein, progression that was like level to level progression.
Yeah, like people really expected that from Wolfenstein, and I think that was not the place to innovate. Essentially, I think that was a really good. I can complete a chunk, and perhaps frustratingly complete a chunk, but I can, get there and boom, I have a success. And that was a good sense of accomplishment that was very important to this kind of game. And then John was thinking about the technology and what he could do with the tech, and he was like, he was starting to lay down some of the basic data structures, but he also was thinking big. So John wanted one big world. He just wanted like one big level. Everybody's going to run around the level. You could like see through doors, and then it was like, okay, it's one big level, and we're doing sort of science fiction.
Let's look at the data there.
Yeah, science fiction with demons and stuff like that. Well, let's make a big base, and then we'll have places to go and kind of sense of place and so on.
So we start calculating, how much memory are we going to use for this game?
Which they are doing. While I'm doing about a month of work on this big world and all these things and little nuances and
we're like calculating sprite sizes, map sizes.
And there's this cool like computer room and there's all these tunnels.
And we're like, there's no way that this is going to work. I mean, we don't have enough memory. We can barely
weird, dangerous slide.
We barely go above 1 megabyte.
The lava
right?
there. And
so we're like,
and you recognize real
we have
places.
A new design.
And
hey,
demons
dude,
come out.
Like new design.
What?
We're going to just kind of do levels. So
that's funny. I remember something about that a month ago.
Yeah. So that was not fun. So Tom was not very happy about that.
I feel something snapping.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mentally.
Like when we were in Wolfenstein, I had, since it was something that was not an elegant part of the engine, I had to really, really, really fight for push walls. But it's like you're going to be walking through things, opening doors. You got to have some secrets. I grew up, playing Mario and stuff like that. I want secrets, and so I really felt the push balls. Finally got in, and it's exciting. So that was kind of like snap zero of why am I fighting for something that would make the game so fun? And then sort of like, what was that month of work that was lost? So, but in that sense. Did you hear that? In that sense, I mean, Carmack was trying to get the best technology out there and the best way you can innovate, and I was trying to do the same, and just like that kind of clash heads a bit.
Yes. So now we'll focus on December. We're all working. We know that half the month is gone for vacations and stuff. Even though we're doing Doom and it's exciting, we're still human, and everybody should be taking vacation. Everybody.
But
at Christmas.
What people go.
So here's a picture of Tom with hair, and he's using.
Thanks everybody. I've lost my glasses. Well, I'll never see them. By the way, as advice to any of you, if you ever invent anything, just go get a patent on it, regardless, because
copyright.
Because at this time, I was at the desk and I was kind of, my wrists are kind of sore. So I had my girlfriend sew this 3 years before computer wrist pads came out. And that's kind of always been a long regret of mine. But
could have been rich.
Anyway, but
you can.
My wrists were happy. That's all that's important.
Anyone could see. Perhaps there's an Alta Lansing speaker on the right. This is all ancient technology. But the next computer was actually like a Mac right now. It's basically the same operating system that you're using right now with the
Mac over it,
with the Mac UI on top of it.
And thanks Pepsi for sponsoring this slide.
Yeah, the nice old calculator. For some reason, he was using that. So then we move to January. January, we were beginning making the game, and there was, with us, these games never have pre-production where we draw a bunch of concepts and then kind of vet things. When we make something, it goes in the game. That's just the way it is. So we immediately start creating the technology, and we start creating the artwork, and we're very confident that what we're making is going to be pretty awesome. And so we put out a press release in January as we basically begin making the game, telling the world how revolutionary the game is going to be. and the press release had here's the big features that we had at the end of the press release, and each of these features in the real press release, which you can Google on the internet, has a whole bunch of explanation behind it, and probably 3 or 4 of those didn't even make it into the game. Don't do a press release before your game is actually out.
There was a gardening section that just really didn't fit.
Yeah,
so.
It was decades later. It was fun. Then we get into February. That's when we actually start making art. We were trying to do new things, so instead of just drawing pixels in Deluxe Paint and making the art that way, Adrian, who was a really amazing pure artist, he would draw the actual characters, and then he started making them in clay, modeling them in clay, and we had a next computer that had a video camera that was set up to capture the monsters as they were put on a lazy Susan that could rotate eighths. We had a post that would mark off eighths, and so we would take a kind of a picture of it and run it through a program called the
they said, what's the name? We're putting stuff in, and little separate things are coming out, pallets and stuff like that. Well, I just said Fuzzy Pumper Pallet Shop or something.
Yeah,
and that stuck. So
that was the name of the tool that we made to take these 16-bit images through a video camera and palletize them into VGA's 256 colors, the Fuzzy Pumper Pallet Shop. So Adrian only did a few of these clay models, and then that was it. There's no more. He's not doing that anymore. Because every time you can animate them, the clay just rips.
Because we had to light them, so when you light clay, then it goes.
Yeah,
it's all over.
It was new and weird, so we kind of stopped doing that. we basically got the engine up and running pretty quickly, throughout January and then into just the very beginning of February. And we took some screenshots, and actually we made a bunch of alphas and stuff while we were making the game. And how many of you have actually seen Doom alphas? Not that many people. Cool, so you'll get to see them.
All those hands will be raised in about 2 minutes.
So we have the first level that Tom was working on. Actually got in the game as E2M7, but it was supposed to be like the first level in the game. But we had a different UI.
And that was the first crate maze ever made in the game. Thank you.
Yes.
But part of that was basically John was worried about like too many polys in the environment, because he wanted fast, and then really have a blazing fast game. So I kind of made crate maze and things like that were more orthogonal and a lot very occlusive, so it would be faster and faster.
So we had, we were experimenting with UI. We had that's Tom's basic UI that he drew himself. And then the other one, was it?
I'm available for art duties later.
Was there the other UI? Was it done by Adrian?
The second one is done by Adrian. Oh, no, I think I did most of that. He did the shell and I did the text.
Oh, okay.
This is my girlfriend's chainsaw. It's a Macaulay Eager Beaver. It's sitting, I used to be sitting on one of my arcade machines, but I sold it, so now it's sitting in my garage. And if you come over, you can go like that.
the Doom
but it's
chainsaw.
kind of drippy and stuff. It's an old chainsaw. It doesn't work anymore.
So you can see there's a power cable going to the video camera that was used to digitize the actual chainsaw. And so all the actual weapons that you saw in Doom were just toys that we bought at Toys R Us. And we just kind of held them in front of the video camera and took a snapshot. And we only had so many toys. I think it was 3 or 4. So we just kind of took pieces and kind of slammed them together in Deluxe Paint and kind of edited them and stuff. So the plasma gun and the BFG are kind of the same weapon toy.
Yeah. The lower res you are, the better art you can do. So it was fine for that time.
That's the
actual
shotgun.
Cap gun. Yeah.
It was a Dakota, the Tootsie Toy Dakota cap gun. We'd actually play with these toys at work. We were just really busy working.
And at this time, basically, Carmack, really wanted efficient spaces. So he says, get books on military stuff. It's basically, give me cement buildings, bunkers, very, very squarish things and so on. It'll really run fast. It'll be very efficient, And I was like, okay. And then went over and looked at various things like this.
That were not very inspiring.
Yeah, they're kind of block. It's sort of like that movie. It's boxy but good. Well, it's not that great.
So Tom made a bunch of levels that were a bunch of cement blocks basically with some other textures put on it, and they weren't that fun to go into because it was like corridors with rooms that you kind of go into, and it might make sense when you're playing a game where hey, demons have taken over a military base, so make it look like a military base and have demons sitting in the rooms, but flow-wise, it just was no fun. It was bizarro, so it wasn't that cool. But we actually made we kind of made a demo, our first pre-alpha of the game, and that's what we have here. Hopefully it'll play correctly.
The lens for rendering that we did back then was great.
Yeah, lens flutter
over
awesome.
The text.
So yes, Evil Unleashed was our subtitle back then. And so this was basically the first level that we made using the data structures we created and DoomEd, which was the tool that I wrote to create the levels. And you can see the second gen UI there with automap in the top right, and this was the first time the monsters were rotating in the engine. Yeah,
and again, the interface was made sort of larger, so there'd be less actual screen real estate to render. Again, it was a sort of performance thing. It's going to be faster if there's sort of 60-70% of the screen to render.
But it doesn't look that cool when most of your screen is taken up with a bunch of UI crap.
It's kind of like old school, like a game like the System Shock or something, where it's important to have an interface around you because you're physically doing things like that. But here you're just it's in a raw environment and it doesn't really.
Yeah, I want to see his head, So we had the UI there. We could actually put a UI in the game, see it's not working too well, take it out.
And there were items at this time. If you notice on the screen, I believe there's a sandwich, both a sandwich and a heart of Lothar on the same screen.
There were a lot of, like the captain's hand was a key to a door, and so there's a lot of esoteric kind of items.
More like adventure-y kind of things, since it was one large world originally.
Yep. Let's see, is this the same? For some reason, it's doing the same thing. Okay. Yes, March. Finally get past February. In March,
Strange thing happened.
in March, something interesting happened while we're making the game. So 20th Century Fox contacted us because we did Wolfenstein, which is a pretty fast game.